morning, everybody. Welcome to our session here today. I'm Shruti.
And I'm Michael.
And we are program managers in the Azure Cost Management team. Today, we're going to do a quick 20-minute run-through on managing your cloud costs within Azure Cost Management.
But before we get started, I'd like to level set on what we mean when we talk about cost management. Cost management is the process of planning and controlling your costs. It starts with understanding what you're spending and where you're spending it, then identifying and enforcing your financial constraints, and reducing costs to stay within those constraints, or potentially freeing up money so you can take on new opportunities. There's a constant cycle of monitoring, which will then kick off this process again and again over time as you identify anomalies or potentially take on new unplanned work.
All right, so let's begin your customer journey. You've decided to move to the cloud, and better still, to Azure. The first thing you're going to want to know is how much is this going to cost me? So you're going to go to our pricing calculator. You're going to go search for the resources and services that you would want to use. You'd look up your costs, and you'd get your estimates. And when everything looks good, you go ahead and you do your first deployment. Before you know it, you have a bunch of resources and services that you've deployed, and your system is up and running. Everything looks good until you get your first bill. And you look at that number, and you wonder, how did that deviate so much from what I had originally planned and estimated? What you're going to want to do now is try and break down those costs and figure out where the outliers are, and let's see how cost management can help you accomplish that.
So to understand where those costs are coming from, we'll start within cost analysis. Cost analysis starts by showing us how we're trending for the current billing period and breaking those costs down by service, location, and resource group. And this tells us what we're spending on the services we're using, as well as where we're spending it in the resource groups where we deployed our apps. Now, to drill into this, we can click on any of the chart segments or change the group by to break costs down by the dimension that we're interested in seeing things. But before we do that, let's take a look at the individual built-in views that we have available to us so we can get a more holistic picture of our costs. We start with the accumulated cost view, which we've already talked about, how it gives you a trend for the current billing period, which we can then use to balance against our expectations for the month. And if we're forecasted to go over those expectations, we can take steps now to mitigate that and potentially reduce our costs. The cost by resource view also looks at the current billing period, but breaks the cost down by the individual resources. So again, you can compare what those individual resource costs are, again, against your expectations. And if you see anything that shouldn't be that expensive, or maybe you left a VM on, or there's a resource that should have been deleted, you can take care of that now and potentially reduce those costs. The daily cost view gives you a daily run rate of the last 30 days, broken down by resource group to identify any anomalies that you may have over the past 30 days. Now, if you want to see this at a little bit more granular level, you can group by resource to then see if there's any anomalies amongst your top 10 resources. The cost by service view takes a little bit higher level view by looking at a month-over-month picture of your services that you're using. As an example here, we can see there's a slight increase in VPN gateway usage in October. And if we wanted to, we could click into that to drill in further. And then lastly, we have an invoice details view, which gives us the same granularity as the invoice PDF that you receive every month. And we can compare that invoice PDF to the usage that we have available in the Azure portal to reconcile those charges. But since we're interested in understanding how the cost of our subscription got to where they are, what we'll do is we'll start with the cost by resource view and then group by resource group so that we can compare each of the different costs of the applications that have been deployed to the environment. And now that we've customized this view, what I want to do is we want to share this out with the team to make sure that everybody is aware of the costs that they're incurring and the impact that has on the bottom line. And we'll do this by saving the view on the subscription so that everybody on the subscription has access to it. We'll share links out to this, maybe an email or over Teams, so that people have a direct link into the portal without having to navigate around and find out how to get this same view themselves. We can export the data behind this view or an image of it, which we can then include in an email or, say, a presentation, which we can share in a status meeting. And then lastly, we can pin this to the Azure Portal dashboard, share that dashboard out with the team to ensure that this is the first thing they see when they sign into the portal.
All right, so now you've broken down your costs. You figured out where your outliers are. You figured out what resources are costing you more. The next step that you're going to take is you're going to want to keep track of these costs and stay on top of them. And you do that by creating a budget. You can create budgets at different scopes and using different filters. Scopes are anything from your billing account or a management group right down to a subscription or resource groups where you manage all your apps and resources. You can use filters in addition to the scopes to narrow down your tracking to specific fields and their values. Like, so for example, you can create a budget at, say, the subscription scope, and you can add a filter to track only those resources that are causing you to go overboard. You could also add tags as a filter, and when you do that, you have a better handle on your budget, and hopefully you're not that surprised with your next bill.
Now at this point, you have one subscription with several resource groups within it. But as your usage grows, you're going to need to find out how do you want to organize your resources to help manage your costs. And you'll typically want to look at this by organization, application, or even environment, for example. And the way you'll do this is using billing accounts, management groups, and tags. Use billing accounts to organize your invoice, which finance will care about, and use management groups to organize your subscriptions for management and governance, and then use tags for any other groupings that you need to help you manage this outside of those two constructs. Now, when we talk about managing your resources with management groups, there are two predominant ways that customers look at this today. You can optimize for policy assignment or organizational reporting. Now, what I mean by optimizing for policy assignment, if you think about the policies that you might enforce in your environment, you'll typically have one set of policies for production and typically more lax set of policies that you'll do in head development. So what you can do is you can create a production and a development management group and then apply those policies to the top, put all the subscriptions underneath that, and everything is great. And this is great, especially for the policy admin, because they only have one place to apply those policies. Now, for organizational reporting, there's a little bit more of a challenge here, because if anybody has any resources that are in both production and development, now they don't have a view where they can see all the costs holistically together. And they have to go to multiple places in order to marry those up. Now, conversely, if you organize your management groups by the org structure, you'll create those management groups just to map to that logically. Then what you get is every leader within the organization has one place to go where they can see all of their costs, all of their compliance rolled up, right? And then policy admins can apply those policies using filters to target your production or development resources. Now, both of these approaches are fine, but keep in mind that tagging is going to be critical whichever way you go. So you need to have a strong tagging strategy. And typically, when you start to look at your tagging strategy, there are 5 key things that you're going to be interested in. You're going to need tags to represent financial tracking, like cost center. You'll need tags to represent your organizational hierarchy, if that's not being covered within management groups. And this will be things like departments and teams. Whatever levels you need to track your organizational hierarchy, just think about those. You'll want to know who's accountable for those resources, so you know who to track down when there's a problem. You'll want some application context, maybe that's an application or project tag. And then potentially also some deployment context, like environment or maybe geographic location. Just keep these in mind as you're planning out your tagging strategy. And then once you do figure out what the tags are that you want to apply and where you want to apply them, make sure that you enforce that using Azure policy. Just remember that tags have to be applied directly on the resources in order for that to be picked up in the cost and usage data. But you can apply tags to the resource groups and then use Azure policy to copy those tags from the resource groups down to the individual resources, which will help save you a lot of time. You can also define required tags using Azure policy and set allowed and default values to ensure quality hygiene for those tags and help streamline that process so that everybody doesn't have to understand what are the specific tags that they need to apply and when to apply them, just by automating that whole process, again, using Azure policy. And then you'll also want to use policy to track compliance and then follow up with the teams that are non-compliant to ensure that those tags do get applied. because any gaps in those tags is going to be more work down the stream for you to recategorize those untagged resources. Now that we've defined our budgets and set up our environment, let's look at ways that we can optimize costs. Now, when you start looking at cost optimization, it's important that you start in Azure Advisor. Azure Advisor has 7 built-in recommendations to help you save money. Things like right-sizing your VMs, deleting unused resources. We've got using standard snapshots for your managed disks, as well as saving additional money by using VM reservations. So make sure that you start there. All of these recommendations are based on your historical usage, so you can trust them. Now, we talked about VM reservations very briefly, but there are 16 services that offer VM reservation, or that offer reservations. These are things like storage and Databricks and SQL. So take a look at all the offerings that are available within reservations to see if any of the services that you're using today are offered there. They will allow you to save up to 72% compared to the pay-as-you-go rates by committing to 1 to 3 years of usage. So once you have that idea of how consistent your usage is, again, take a look at reservations. And you don't only have to pay for this up front. There's also an option to pay for this on a monthly basis to give you more flexibility in how you want to pay for that reservation. And we also have some new reporting options that are coming very soon. So please stop by the cost management booth, and we would love to show those to you and get your feedback. Now, if you're moving from on-prem to the cloud, you may have some licenses that you're no longer using. So if you do have any Windows or SQL Server licenses that you're not using because you've moved those workloads to the cloud, make sure that you look at using them, using Azure Hybrid Benefit on your VMs, your Azure Dedicated Hosts, and SQL databases. And again, we also have some new reporting that's coming for Hybrid Benefit, so please stop by the cost management booth so we can show those to you and get your feedback. And the last thing I want to touch on in cost optimization is when you're using a service, make sure that you understand how that service is charging you. One of the great tools for this is the Azure Pricing Calculator. Even if you're not estimating your costs, use the pricing calculator, pick the service that you're interested in, and it'll show you a breakdown of all the different factors that make up the total cost of that resource, right? Just as an example, we know that VMs are charged by the hour, and we can stop the VM so that we're not getting charged for additional hours. But we're still being charged for the storage that disk is taking up. And then when the VM's running, we are also charged for network bandwidth within the data center and especially between data centers. These are all things that we need to take into consideration. Another example is storage. Let's say that we have some amount of data that we need to always have available from the cloud, but we don't access it that frequently. Instead of putting that in hot storage, we could put it in cool or potentially even archive storage to dramatically reduce the amount that we pay over time. So again, make sure that you understand how the services you're using are charging you, which will help you avoid any unexpected charges, and make sure you factor that into your architecture and plan ahead for that, so that way you can minimize costs while still accomplishing your goals.
All right, so we've gone over breaking down your costs, we've gone over setting budgets, we've gone over optimizing and reducing your costs. But let's go a little bit beyond and see what more you can do with your cost and usage data. You can take advantage of the Power BI connectors that we provide and use them to build your own custom dashboards that gives you different views and drill downs into your own data sets. You could schedule exporting all of your usage and cost data into an external storage account and then use that to integrate it with your business model. All of the cost management functionality that Michael and I have been talking about is also available natively via REST APIs. So if you wanted to have automated reporting capabilities within your organization, you could take advantage of these APIs and do that. I talked about budgets and how you can set thresholds and be alerted and notified when you're nearing that threshold or you go over that threshold. You can take that one step further. You can configure what we call an action group, which will kick off an action that can take place when you're nearing your threshold or going over it. Like, for example, you can write a custom script that will get kicked off if you're nearing your threshold for a particular resource or for a bunch of resources. That gives you a slightly better handle on your costs and alerts you or gets rid of the outliers even before you get your next bill. And If you subscribe to AWS besides Azure, we have the cloud connectors that you can use to bring your AWS data into Azure. So that way you can get a whole single consolidated view of all of your cloud costs within Azure Cost Management. I also wanted to touch a little bit about our roadmap and all of the exciting features that we're bringing next year. Starting with the markup and cost allocation features. So markup is the ability to add a margin over your base Azure costs, and cost allocation is the way to split costs across different teams within your organizations for things like shared resources or any overhead charges that you have within your organization. So the support for that is coming in next year. We've already launched Azure Cost Management for our CSPs and their customers who've migrated to the Microsoft customer agreement. We're going to extend this support to all CSPs sometime next year, and also support those on the sponsorship offers. I talked about how we have support for AWS connectors. We're going to take that one step further, extend it to GCP, Google Cloud Platform. So if you subscribe to all three of them, all of that will be available in one-stop Azure Cost Management. And besides all the new features that we're releasing, we also are constantly working on improving our existing functionality and capabilities for reporting and invoice recon. A lot of it is done based off of the feedback that we get from our users, from you guys, and we would love to hear more about it from you. We're at the end of our session actually, and we still have some time, so if you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to help you with it. If you have to run, that's fine too. You'll find us in the Azure Cost Management booth in the hub. So thank you for hanging out with us today, guys. Thank you.
Does anybody have any specific questions that they want? There's a mic coming around.
Thank you. We manage many customers in the cloud. Mm-hmm. Is this something that we could give to our customers and then we can have an umbrella way to look at this? Or how would we implement this tool for our customers within our business customers? You know what I'm saying?
Within your organization?
Within our organization, yeah. So would we give them this tool and kind of get them spun up using it so that they can do this themselves? Or is this something as the owner of these customers would do?
One of the critical tenets to cost management is making sure that within the organization, everyone has visibility into those costs, because you can only optimize and reduce those costs if everybody has the ability to see what their impact to those costs are. So yes, absolutely, anybody within the organization can see those costs. There is an option within the billing account that you can turn this on and off. For enterprise agreements, it's off by default, so make sure that you go turn that on. There's two settings. One is called department view charges, and the other one is called AO, or account owner can view charges. That AO view charges is the thing that enables it for the entire organization to ensure that anyone who has access to a subscription, whether that be in a resource group, a subscription, or the management group, it ensures that they can see costs. And then using that, once that's enabled, then all the built-in roles, the reader, contributor, owner, there's also cost management reader and cost management contributor. All these roles will have access to see those costs. And then you can also create your own custom roles if you need to do that as well, just using the cost management RP to grant access to those costs. Yes, the question was, they can use all these tools. Every single one of these things is available to resource groups, subscriptions, management groups, billing accounts. Depending on the type of billing account, you may have different levels within that, like departments or billing profiles. It's available at all scopes. Okay. Any other questions? Oh, yes. Okay, so the question was, how do we so the question was, how do we expose visibility to the cost to an external entity? Can you clarify what you mean by that? Yeah. Mm. Okay, so I haven't looked at. So the question was, how can she's using API management, and she wants to expose costs to those people that are using that. So I don't know the specifics of API management, but I believe at that point it's going to require you to probably couple the data that you can get out of cost management with the usage data that you get from any metrics that you may have with an API management. And again, I have to look at the usage data that is submitted through the system to see if there's a way to map that back. And unfortunately, I don't know that off the top of my head. But if you want, stop by the cost management booth later, and then what we can do is we can go talk to the API management team and we'll figure this out. So, okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right, if we don't have any other questions, then thank you for coming. I hope you enjoy the conference. And again, please stop by the cost management booth, and we'd love to talk in more detail if you have any other questions or want to know what's coming. Thank you.